Hey, welcome everyone to our live stream. We're here today. My name's Brent Allen. I'm here with Tommy Morton. We're a couple of the CFOs here at Amplify. What a difference a week makes. I just think back a week ago, Tommy, we were all wondering whether this was going to be an event or not. I think late last week and over the weekend, we realized whether this is a real health-related event or not, we do have an economic event on our hands. And so we've been working tirelessly with our team to make sure we stay on top of it, to make sure that we have as much information for our clients and the business owners out there in our community as possible to help them be successful through this trying time.
Yeah, I would agree with Brent. I think 2 weeks ago I was on the golf course thinking, we're going to have to be careful. We need to do some planning, but obviously this last 3 days or so, things have escalated since last week, and it's really a priority for a business owner to really understand what the implications are for them and do the appropriate planning and really grasp the news that's coming at them on a rapid method.
So full disclosure, Tommy and I are used to consulting with business owners and helping them through tough spots. We are not used to doing live streams.
Right, Tommy? Yeah, the only kind of live stream I'm used to is a little babbling brook with my feet watering through cold water.
So this is something new for us, but Tommy and I have been having 7 a.m. update calls this week where we get together and understand what's going on, what's new in the news, what details are out there that we can share with our clients. And we were encouraged by our team to go ahead and start sharing some of that information with all of you. So we want to talk about some of the things that have happened,
right.
What we're advising our clients to do, and then just take any questions that we all may have. So let's go back. Obviously over the weekend, Tommy, we found out this was going to be a major economic event with what happened in the markets at the end of last week, with some of the closures that we started seeing.
Yep.
Specifically, we've got some clients in the hospitality industry, and we saw them being forced to close under the mandates of any gatherings over 100 people being banned in North Carolina here.
It's affected those customers of ours that supply those industries. They're in situations where their production's being curtailed back because the need for the product isn't there, because those places that are being closed obviously are not having business.
But the vast majority of our clients really have not felt the economic impacts of this yet.
Not yet.
So they're all preparing, and we've been helping them. Over the weekend, a couple of significant things, announcements came out from the administration. First, there was an SBA disaster recovery loan program put out there. $50 billion was put out through the SBA. And so we've been encouraging our clients to go ahead and apply for those funds.
Exactly.
The program actually came online here from North Carolina yesterday, about 3 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
We walked several clients through the process. It's not a bad process for the initial application. And we don't know all the details. So we'll tell you what we do know. We do know that it's up to $2 million. If you're a for-profit entity, it's 3.75% interest, and the term can be as long as 30 years. If you're a not-for-profit entity, that interest rate is 2.75%.
Obviously, in a time like this is an opportunity to shore up your cash flow needs at a very low cost. And the steps to go through, the government actually is, at this point in time, the way it appears, has not made it too difficult. We've developed a checklist of requirements of documents that you need. By pulling those information, we can help you actually get it filed online, make sure that your house is in order, and get the quickest response back. At this time, I don't think anybody has an idea of the timing of getting that response, but hopefully we'll see it within a week or two is what I would believe.
So generally the SBA administers their programs through their partners, through their partner banks. The disaster recovery program is different. The SBA administers that on their own. So the things that we know is last year the SBA total, all their programs did about $30 billion worth of lending. They're being asked to do $50 billion worth of lending in just a couple months. And so we're encouraging everybody to get in quickly, get their application in, because we anticipate that the system is going to get overrun. And frankly, I know $50 billion sounds like a lot of money, but I think it's going to run out. So the number one thing we're encouraging everybody to do is get online, get on the website, get that application in.
Yeah.
After that application is reviewed for completeness, the next step is somebody from the SBA will reach out and move through the application with you. And at that point, you guys will talk about how do you determine how much money you need or what the economic impact has been to you.
I think leading up to the actual process of getting that filed, I know we're looking to go ahead and try to get as much as you can, but once that application's in, we really need to understand what's your real cash position. You know, right now, you're used to your receivables rolling in, and you're used to trying to pay people off. At the same time, that cash coming in from receivables is going to be a different world. You have people out there that are looking at business just like you are, and you're going to want to conserve your cash and be respectful of those that are around you, and understand you might have to work out some payment plans because they're trying to find out, you know, where their position is as well.
It's a great point. So the number one thing we're advising our clients to do is get that SBA application in, but we're expecting those funds may take weeks or even months to materialize. So next we are recommending to our clients that they put their eyes on their current cash position, just what Tommy was saying. Make sure you understand where your AR. Don't expect your AR to roll in the way it has been in the past. Pick up the phone, call your customers, get an understanding of where they are and whether you can count on those checks coming in. The same thing we're going to encourage you to do is pick up the phone and call your vendors, and talk to them about whether you can extend payment terms. Just really keeping as much cash in-house as possible.
Without interrupting that supply chain.
That's right.
That supply chain, you got to realize too, by picking up the phone, you might be able to find out the status of your vendor. I imagine a lot of you probably have been in conversation already with key vendors, but you've got also the smaller vendors that maybe aren't on the radar that could interrupt your manufacturing if you're continuing to manufacture. So, you know, picking up the phone and calling that vendor is just as important as it is calling that customer.
Yeah. And so the next thing that happened over the weekend was the Fed came out. There's big headlines about them dropping the rates to basically zero. But I don't think that was the biggest thing, Tommy, that happened over the weekend with the Fed. The Fed really announced that they were going to come out and reduce or eliminate the reserve requirements for banks, really take the handcuffs off of them as far as them being able to get creative with some loans, provide relief, and restructure some debt. And so I had talked to several of the bankers in the area as well as nationwide. All of them are standing by, ready to help. They understand the situation. So the next thing we're advising our clients to do is prepare at least a 3-month forecast. And we are advising them to be relatively pessimistic on that forecast. We're going to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And so we want you guys to look at pushing your revenue streams out 60 days, as well as pushing your current accounts receivable out 60 days, and look to see what type of cash position that puts you in. And then as quickly as possible, go sit in front of your banker. This is the time that your banker's there to be your partner. Sit down in front of them and say, hey, you know, what are we going to do? We hope this worst case scenario doesn't happen, but how do we look at deferring all our principal and interest payments? Can we look at overextending our line of credit or obtaining a line of credit quickly?
Yeah, we already, a couple of clients have already communicated with us that their banking partner has allowed them to actually defer payments on principal and, I mean, on interest for sure, on some cases, principal and interest, other situations. And then the other thing is there's 1 or 2 banks that are actually going ahead and extending a credit line for their customers above beyond what they've got right now, without really any paperwork at all. But the bankers are out there to really help. They're going to try to do everything they can to support us during this time.
So in the short range, that's your best bet, is to get in touch with your banker and let them help you. Be honest with them, be open with them, and I think they're going to be, our experiences, they're out there, they're ready to help. I would encourage everyone not to wait until this is an issue. If you look at how quickly things changed over the last 7 days, I'm concerned that as testing becomes more prevalent, we may find that we end up with more restrictions as far as who can go, what businesses can be open, and where people can go. I think that we're probably not quite at the bottom yet. and I'd rather everybody be over aggressive in their projections as far as downside, get as much liquidity as possible. And guys, if you've overreacted and you got to pay that money back in 3 months and you didn't really need it, I think you're in a much better position than find yourself in 2 weeks from now and not having enough cash to make payroll.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing is you're managing really day to day right now. At the same time as you're managing day to day, it's not an overreaction. It's not a knee jerk. It really is in trying to anticipate. And if something doesn't come in the way you expect, step back and at least pause for a minute to really think through what you need to do. By getting that buffer on cash, it will help you in your decision making, because we all know as business owners that the most stressful thing is not having enough cash to pay your employees or to pay your vendors. It's you have an ongoing business, so let's try to get as much cash in or build our reserves accordingly.
So first thing is get that SBA application in. That's our
Yes.
recommendation. The second thing is do your 3-month projections and get in front of your banker and talk to them about making sure you have enough liquidity based on that circumstance. The third thing we're going to talk about is really packing in from an expense standpoint, right, Tommy? It's we're recommended that nobody hire right now, that we don't give raises, that we cut all non-essential expenses that won't hurt you long term at a minimum, and do that pretty quickly.
Yeah, a lot of us are working remotely these days. You have employees that are not in the office, and so some of that communication is a little more difficult. Utilizing Hangouts or Skype or Teams or whatever, it is works, but a lot of times to get that message across, hey, we really need to control that spending, or if you are spending, let's make sure that it's going through the right channels. It is very critical that you know what money is being spent on. If you need to delay a capital expenditure, just put it on hold. It's one of those things, make sure that you really need to spend that money, because if this goes beyond these 90 days and it extends out further, to call it 180 days, and we don't really start seeing a recovery until September, you don't want to have already expended money that maybe you should have held on to for a period of time. So evaluate things carefully.
And Tommy's talking about 90 or 180 days. I'm really, guys, for me right now, we're taking it day by day, week by week. And so, in 2 weeks, if we all decide that we had a overreaction to this, again, it's, we can still go back out and spend that money. So really, we encourage you to pull expenses in as tightly as possible in the short term. So Tommy, we've also got some legislation that's coming out.
That's correct.
The Family First Act was passed by the House, I think, late last week. It finally made it through the Senate and to the President's desk last night. Was signed. I think that's a significant piece of legislation.
Well, I mean, it's really helping those parents that have children at home. It's helping those people that have at least been diagnosed with the virus. So it's one of these things, though, as an employer, it makes it difficult because I might be faced with a labor shortage because people might be off. And I think it's a total of 12 weeks that we're looking at.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I agree with Tommy. It's a good thing, but also could be a bad thing. We really have to manage it correctly. We have the 2-week period of PTO.
Right.
And by the way, this law applies to companies that have less than 500 employees.
That's important to point out.
And companies that have less than 50 employees are able to potentially opt out.
Right.
So everybody just needs to understand that. But the bill mandates PTO, 2 weeks paid time off for employees at 100% of the rate.
And also, I think the thing we were talking about this morning is that the PTO policies that a company has in place, they need to use that up first, and then this will kick in. So it's not like an employee will get this and they keep what they've got. They need to use up their PTO first, and then this kicks in.
That's a good point, Tommy. So we have the PTO. Now, people are wondering, where's the money coming from? Well, the employer has to pay out that PTO.
Right.
And that's going to be paid back by the government through a refundable tax credit on your payroll taxes or your quarterly 941s.
Right.
So there's a quarter end here in March. There'll be another quarter end in June where you'll get that money back for that program. We also have
real quick, Brent.
Sure.
I think one of the other things you mentioned to me this morning was the time frame that this is going to cover.
Yep.
And it's sort of retroactive.
That's right. You will be able to apply this back retroactively. What I've seen so far is all the way back to January.
Okay.
And so there's also a cap on that PTO, what can get paid out,
Right.
and that cap on that first 2 weeks is $511 a day. So it's about, if you annualize that, it's about a $130,000 salary.
Right.
So anybody that's $130,000 or less generally is going to receive full compensation for those 2 weeks, for that 80 hours. The second piece is extended FMLA,
Right.
which takes that 2 weeks and extends it another 10 weeks for a total of 12.
Right.
That is a maximum of $200 a day, and it's 2/3 of the employee's pay.
Right.
So again, that will be paid through the company, and paid back through payroll tax credits.
Through the credits, and that way, as the employer, you do have a little bit of a time lag on your cash. This is again one of the things Brett and I've been talking about, how we factor this into our cash projections. We realize that some of this will get caught up later. Right now, our focus is really a down and dirty. Let's get a number. As we start getting further out into this and working with it, we'll have to factor those things in. But right now, understand the government is going to be paying it back through your quarterly taxes as a refund, and it basically reduces the amount you pay in.
That's correct. So we expect some of it could be claimed in your March filing, which you would be getting back in April.
Right.
Some of it's going to be claimed in your June filing, which will be paid back in July. The Treasury Secretary has come out. He's been asked the question directly: what if a company can't cash flow that for that period of time?
Yeah.
And he said that they are going to make funds available. I have no idea how they're going to execute that, but
Yeah.
we'll stay tuned in the next few days.
That'll be interesting to see, because I mean they've got a lot coming at them.
Yeah.
And so the process they put in for that, as soon as we find that out, we'll get that communicated out.
That's correct. Yeah.
There was a question I think we needed to answer real quick.
Yeah, so one of them was about the timing of the government payback. They asked about the 50 employee number in place now. It is. It's a funny little application process, but effectively, if you're under 50 and you want to opt out, you're going to have that ability to do so. We've got, one of the things, Tommy, that I was concerned with, this double-edged sword on this program,
Right.
is, I am concerned with the messaging getting out to the employees potentially that, hey, I've basically got 12 weeks I can go out,
Right.
stay at home, get paid, and a significant portion of the workforce being absent for that period of time. I also am concerned a little bit that the governmental entities, the states, may use this as a catalyst to go ahead and shut down more industries.
Shutting down more, I'd heard that in Pennsylvania, construction was one that they were actually considering shutting down. I know in North Carolina, that's a very important industry here. I've not heard anything to that effect yet, but obviously if it's already starting to happen, that's a concern. So.
Sure. So we're watching that. I'm interested to see what the messaging with the media is as that comes out. I think this could be a really good thing, guys. If everybody gets in front of your employees early, talks to them about what this means for the business, what this means for them in the short run. I think it could be a positive. But if you're not out there talking, if you let the media educate your folks on what this is, it could end up backfiring.
Yeah, I've seen a couple clients have actually set up blogs on their intranet. They're using that to communicate with employees, to advise them of the things that are being done in-house, as well as what they're reading into the policies or information they're getting. One of the big things that I think has been successful is really trying to communicate to employees, hey, we're worried about your health as much as we are trying to get product out the door. Creating a work environment where that 6-foot space is at, taking employees and making sure, hey, if you're sick, don't come in, don't infect others. I know that in certain industries they have the ability to have a nurse on staff. When people are walking in the door, they're checking them for a temperature. I'm not saying do that, but the main thing for us small business employers is you don't want sick employees in the office. If they can work remote, it is better off. If you need them in to actually operate machinery or the line or pack or ship, make sure they're healthy and make sure you're constantly monitoring that. Put out the bottles, antibacterial soap, give them things to wipe down. I mean, you know, Costco's got guys walking around with little wipes so you can continue to wipe down throughout the day. So
We, I'm part of a Vistage group, and we had a call yesterday morning. And one of the best pieces of advice I heard, some of the more dynamic, powerful leaders were just saying, hey, we're talking to our troops every single day. Guys, there's a lot of distrust out there as far as the media goes, and people don't know what to think. They don't know what to think about their personal income, about how healthy the company is, but also they don't know what to think about the pandemic, and making sure that they hear from somebody they trust. So I encourage all of you to get educated on what's going on and make sure you're communicating to your troops every day. Okay, so there's a question here about if you're forced to lay off employees, are they eligible for FMLA? And so that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
It leads us to another thing that's happened in the last week. Governor Cooper, one of his executive orders, included a change in the unemployment policy for the state. So today we've got unemployment. The 1 week lag time has been waived.
It's totally gone.
If employee claims unemployment, it does not count against the employer.
That's right.
Against their experience. And we also have, from unemployment standpoint, we've got, what else, Tommy? What's the third thing?
It was the wave of the week.
Yeah.
Okay. And not penalizing the employer, and I can't remember, but I'll go find it. We'll go find out.
So if you I'm sorry, it was a temporary layoffs.
Oh, okay.
That used to be 15 years ago. You used to be able to use temporary layoffs, and that you were able to draw unemployment. That went away, but that came back with this executive order. So we've got if you've got an employee where you only have 20 hours worth of work for them,
right,
or you need to lay them off for 2 weeks and bring them back, they're eligible for that unemployment. If you lay somebody off, they're going to go through unemployment, not FMLA.
Right.
And the downside to that, while the company doesn't have to carry the burden of paying it out, it's a significantly reduced rate as opposed to the PTA and FMLA policies that were enacted.
Yeah, I think one of the things that for employers to consider is definitely the ability to do the temporary layoff versus the permanent layoff. The thing to consider is if and when the business is coming back, there's that cost of training. So these are some of the aspects that are sort of beyond just the immediate. It is, if you're starting to see business come back, the last thing you want to do is have invested in an employee and not be able to bring them back, or lose them to somebody else possibly, or not bring them back. So there's a lot of aspects to this, just than the pure dollars that you're looking at coming out of the gate.
Yeah. So one of the questions here is, are there any advantages or disadvantages around furloughing versus laying off workers for the employer and employee? Obviously, we talked about for the employee, if we keep them on staff technically and push them out through the PTO and FMLA policies, they're going to actually be able to collect more money in that time frame. And then, I would encourage any business that thinks that they're going to want to retain these employees long range to go that route at the end of that 12 weeks. If at that point you have to lay them off, I think there's no real disadvantage to you other than the short-term cash flow. And if that becomes the driving factor between you having to utilize these new policies under this legislation or lay folks off, again, I would look to sources around you to see if you can figure out how to finance that.
And as the treasurer said, they will help employers that have struggling with a little bit of cash flow issues, waiting for that quarterly payment. So definitely, it's a very tough decision. I know a couple companies already are going through that trying time and trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah. One other thing to note is that the April 15th deadline for paying your taxes has been extended for 90 days. Right now, there's a technicality there. there is not an extension for filing your taxes.
Not at
just
this point.
just an extension for paying for your taxes. So just make sure that everybody at least files an extension as of April 15th.
Yeah, main thing, if you're having difficulty finding a CPA, because a lot of the firms that we work with, they are working remotely now. So if you can imagine, it's difficult for them to get all the data around and collect all the information. Get in touch with them, get the extension filed so that's taken care of. Get ahead of that right now. Worst case is file the extension now, and then you actually file your return on time, because maybe things do get better. If they don't get better, you have time to get it filed then.
Absolutely. Well, Tommy, I know you've got a client meeting that you've got to get to.
Yeah.
That's critical. Is there anything else that we didn't cover already that you want to say before you leave?
Really, just make sure everybody just needs to be safe, but not overreact. Create an environment for your employees that they feel open and can come and talk to you. And it's a very trying time for everybody. So.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good talk.
So we'll take any more questions that you guys have. I would encourage everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel, check back for regular updates and other live events. We're going to try to hold this style conversation on a very frequent basis until things start to slow down and calm down. We're expecting another stimulus package out in the next week. We don't know what that's going to look like for businesses or individuals. But we're staying tuned, and as soon as we know something, we'll let you know. Also, the piece of legislation that passed last night, we don't have a lot of details around how that's going to be executed. I feel like we're going to know that sometime tomorrow or through the weekend, exactly how that's going to work. So. Let's see. How does the 12-week time off work with internal PTO policies? So the legislation was very clear that it has to lay on top of your current PTO policies. So if you had 3 weeks vacation or PTO that you gave your employees, you have to allow them to take that first, and then they'll qualify for the additional under the legislation. So you can't go back and say no PTO for our employees at this point. This has got to be over and above what you already had. Okay, we'll hang out for just another minute. If anybody else has any questions, please put them out there, and we'll try to respond. Nothing? Okay. Well, guys, I appreciate you being here on our first live stream with us. We're here to help in any way we can. If you got any questions, please reach out. Again, I'll encourage everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch for regular updates. We're gonna let you guys know what we know when we know it. Thank you.